are Seraphim.
Welcome to the Generation Space podcast, the global space tech investor podcast where we explore how space technologies are transforming industries and redefining our future. Today's episode, titled Industries in the Intelligent Age, draws from one of the critical themes presented at the World Economic Forum Davos 2025. The theme highlights how industries must adapt to major global changes driven by technology and shifting economic conditions. With technology as the main force of disruption, industries are undergoing rapid transformation. Leaders must navigate these changes while balancing immediate needs with long-term sustainability. Joining me to discuss how satellite communications are contributing to this evolution are two brilliant guests, Brian Manning, founder and CEO of Xona Space Systems, and Lewis Jones, investment VP at Generation Space. Welcome, Brian, and welcome, Lewis.
I'm very excited to be here.
Thanks for having me.
So let's get straight to the basics with Brian. For those who are not familiar, Brian, can you explain how satellite communication and GPS are shaping industries today?
Sure. Yeah. So I can speak a little bit more to the GPS side, and that's where more of my experience is. But not too many people, I think, realize just how much of a monster GPS has become and how many industries are now dependent on it. And then it's everything from, most people see it as the little blue dots on your phone, and okay, it's how you get to Starbucks in the morning. But it's also how most of your packages probably got to where you're at, and it's also how your bank is synchronized with financial markets to do transactions, and it's how power grids are synchronized in timing, and it's planes, trains, ships, trucks, anything that moves, and even a lot of things that don't have all become incredibly dependent on GPS, and a lot of that just comes down to everything the world needs to know where it's at these days and what time it is. And I had a guy give me a great example once of, if you wake up from a coma after 30 years, what are the first two questions that you're going to ask? And it's going to be, well, where am I and what time is it? And those are the two questions that GPS answers for everything around the world, pretty much every day. And part of the reason that GPS is the de facto standard for answering these questions, and instead of cellular or Wi-Fi or things like that, is really it's affordable and scalable. It's a service and a capability that can be utilized even in very small, low-cost devices with affordable hardware. And the ability to provide a uniform service and capability anywhere on Earth without the need for local infrastructure. And as you see industries continue to expand, and the world of AI continuing to expand, everybody's looking at how they optimize their efficiency. And in order to do this, you need to know where your assets are, whether it's a car, a package, a tractor, et cetera. And the better and higher precision data that you have, the better insights that you can create out of that. So it's something that we've seen be very important in current industries, but also of growing importance as things continue to expand and tech pushes forward here also.
Yeah, that's super interesting. It's clear that these tools aren't just enabling industries today, but setting the stage for a more connected future. Lewis, have you got anything to add in particular about satellite communications to that, more specific in general?
Yeah, so IoT devices also play quite an important role into how we monitor our infrastructure. Expect that satellite-enabled IoT, which is just about emerging now, will play an interesting role in that, especially for very remote areas. So a lot of interesting stuff coming from that perspective. Also satellite imagery as part of monitoring our environment and figuring out what energy demands we can generate from renewable energies. So quite a few different ways that space plays a vital role.
Yeah, so industries like climate monitoring and security.
Yeah, and energy generation more generally.
Lewis, according to Davos, electricity demand from the sector could reach 1,000 terawatt hours in 2026 compared to 460 today. As an investor, how do you see the demand for technology intersecting with the challenges of increased energy consumption going forward?
This is a really unfortunate byproduct of these new generative AI models. ChatGPT has more recently become pretty commonplace in some households and the way many businesses operate. But while it can solve many problems, these models are on the whole very computationally expensive. And the same can be said for quantum computing and automation, because it stresses our infrastructure. So there's been a lot of investment more recently in making chips more efficient, immersion cooling in data centers, more efficient algorithms, but we expect that demand to really continue to grow. So we're going to require a holistic approach. I personally believe space is going to play a vital role in that. As we mentioned earlier, you can use satellite communications, GPS, and imagery to really monitor these assets, figure out how we can best efficiently use renewable energy systems, and ideally figure out where to most efficiently place these new structures so that they can generate the most electricity. So it's going to require many industries working together to build a viable solution.
What do you mean, something like space solar or?
That could potentially come into the fray as well. I mean, that's definitely further out, but more so that we can use satellite imagery to figure out where to place our solar panels and point them so that they generate the most electricity at any given point. So lots of different ways space is being used today and in the future.
Yeah, it's great to hear how investments in these sustainable solutions can help us meet these needs without even further compromising our future on the planet. Brian, can you provide any examples to the audience where GPS technologies are solving immediate challenges while still contributing to longer term sustainability?
Yeah, there's quite a few. I mean, there's our company is formed largely coming out of the automotive world, and there are a lot of, I guess, fairly clear use cases in there from routing, logistics, efficiency, traffic management, etc. That's already happening, and as things move towards autonomy, continuing to drive those efficiency gains. But again, all depends on kind of the foundation of the pyramid is knowing where things are at. One that I think is kind of goes under the radar a little bit more than it should, though, is the agriculture world. And GPS has long since been one of the backbones, probably for the past 30 or so years now. Ever since GPS became open to the public, it's become a staple in the agriculture communities, and even to the world that's precision agriculture. That a lot, the farming and agriculture community was one of the first ones to figure out that you could actually get high precision out of GPS if you use the right equipment and monitoring. And it's a bit complex how it's done today, but you can get down to pretty high accuracy. And if you can get down to really high precision, the benefits and the savings are unfathomable. I found a report of a group in the US that went through this and looked at what have the benefits from precision agriculture, from having this very high accuracy been. And it was, the amount of savings in fertilizer, in even just land area by having straight rows, by being able to utilize entire plots of land. The fuel savings from just efficiency, it was something like equivalent to almost 200,000 cars. So it saved more fuel in a year than taking 200,000 cars off the road. And the other one that was even crazier to me was water. And farms and agriculture use something like 70% of the world's water consumption. And in the US alone, precision agriculture practices saved more water than all the people in the US consumed. It took me a while to wrap my head around that, of we saved enough water to feed, or I guess to support everybody in the entire country. And so the amount of benefits from precision agriculture are really impressive and exciting. The challenges, though, with precision ag today is that it does still take fairly complex equipment. And so it's something that in general is more limited to, higher budget operations. That's one of the things that we're really excited about with what we're doing, is how do we start to make, not just GPS available, but how do we make the really reliable precision, scalable, affordable, and start to get those type of benefits out into, the small farmers, into the developing countries, into the places where they can really make a huge impact in the world and are really needed, and kind of get that iPhone moment of what did the world look like before everybody could afford a phone, and how much different is it when you can start to get technology into the people's hands that really need it and can make a big difference with it. So that's just one of the areas. There's a lot more, but pause there. It's instead of going too far in depth.
Fascinating. Thanks for sharing those stats. Any idea what would be the timeline on, roughly, getting this out to those kind of places, those kind of countries that are desperately in need of this technology?
Yeah, I think there's even things happening, especially with what we're doing here at Xona, that you'll start to see this happening in the next 2 to 3 years. Our system is designed to kind of continuously increase both capabilities and coverage as it scales up. But even in the early stages, there's a lot of benefits that can be gained for a lot of these folks. So we're excited to start driving that in the 26, 27 timeframe.
Lewis, anything to add to that? Any other industries that you bring to light? Or
ultimately, we just expect most industries to adopt space technology to figure out how they manage their operations more efficiently anything that works in a remote environment has to work reliably and efficiently. And so GPS provides a fantastic solution to that.
From the Davos theme, they're always talking about collaboration, and that's a big part of the whole event. And it's often cited as essential in addressing global challenges. How do you see businesses, governments, and civil society working together, Lewis, in this context to help deliver these technologies on a global scale?
So most of our businesses, as you can imagine, are pretty capital intensive. They need to raise a lot of money to work on their development or to build their solution. So we've seen many governments and businesses work together to help fund some of that development. There's a massive benefit to the economy, the local economy as well. So this tends to create many different jobs, a manufacturing centre, and boost the economy in that sense. And so governments are very incentivized to help local businesses with that support. An example, we've seen one of our portfolio companies, Spire. They received a lot of investment from Scottish Enterprise and Scottish Development Bank when they were building out their solution to manufacture multiple satellites in Scotland. And it created a massive amount of jobs, and it made Glasgow one of the satellite manufacturing centres of the world. A very good example of where it's worked in the past. The US is definitely at the forefront of this with the DoD and how often it funds non-recurring engineering costs for many different businesses and startups. Whereas I think some of the other governments in the world probably lack that same program. So it's massively important. I mean, it comes at a cost. It takes a lot of money to build some of these solutions, but they're transformative solutions, and we're going to need new solutions as part of living in this future that requires much higher energy consumption, global resilient comms, and so many different technologies that we need to develop from first principles.
Brian, do you see the value in any kind of public-private partnerships? Do you have any experience of that yourself, and how's that affected Xona?
Yeah, I think anytime that you have an industry where there's a combination of a very clear government need and also a massive commercial potential, it should just be like screaming public-private partnerships to leaders on both sides of that. And I think satellite navigation is really at that perfect intersection right now to be able to absolutely maximize the benefits of these things. And if you look at the world of satellite navigation, the current systems today are military first designed, government owned and operated, although 99+% of the actual users are commercial. And what this has done is created a massive and growing disconnect between the needs of the users and the capabilities of the systems. And a lot of what we're doing here at Xona is working to realign those. And I believe that the most efficient way to make that alignment between the needs of the users and the capabilities that they're being provided is through commercialization. Very simple concept, follow the money. If the service isn't valuable to the end user, they're not going to pay for it, and the company and service will no longer exist. This is just not only very kind of a simple concept, but I think it's also extremely necessary in the world of satellite navigation. Like, if SatNav is going to continue to be a relevant technology in the commercial world beyond the next decade, it needs to really align with the needs of the commercial space out there. And to me, the best, one of the kind of shining star examples of something like this was NASA commercial COTS program. And the world was at a point where there was a very clear government need for better launch capability. There was a pretty clear potential for a commercial market. And NASA put together a brilliant program the way it was structured. And out of that program largely was, I would say born SpaceX, but it was one of the programs that really helped in many ways got SpaceX from where they were into a whole nother league. And there's, again, a lot of other things that contributed to SpaceX's success and the people there. But this program undeniably was a big accelerant for them and help. And what NASA got out of that program was 2 new launch vehicles, 2 orbital capsules at just unprecedented speed, cost, capability, et cetera, unlike anything that had ever been seen before. And so I think the world of satellite navigation is in almost the exact same spot where there's a very clear government need, a huge potential commercial market. And it's really the kind of ideal situation for something like these public-private partnerships to exist, to solve challenges on both sides with more efficiency than either side could handle it independently.
Yeah, really makes sense. We don't want to go too deep into politics, but obviously with the recent, appointment of Jared Isaacman, I think I've just read a lot of things that, people see this aligning kind of more government and commercial. Is that something that you agree with, or something that we see potentially happening?
For sure. I think it's optimistic with the new administration. I've never met Mr. Isaacman, but generally heard good things from everyone that has worked for him and around him. And so excited to see if we can really get aligned and get the best out of both worlds. And instead of duplicating efforts, how do we maximize the capabilities so that each side is filling the gaps and everything works together into a nice puzzle that all the pieces are filled in on?
Yeah, exactly. Lewis, let's talk about leadership. What qualities do you think these leaders, some that we just mentioned potentially, need to guide industries through these kind of disruptive and transformative times?
Good storytellers, I think, comes atop of that list. You're basically building a business with a vision that no one else believes, and you've got to prove them wrong. And that means you typically have to raise a lot of capital, and you need to be very effective at hiring. And so we've seen that correlate very well with people who can tell the story very well and attract those people into the business. So the other thing is these businesses take a long, long time to build. You're definitely going through many different economic cycles and many different environments to build this business in. And so you've got to be adaptive. You've got to adapt to new challenges that come your way, because the problems and the landscape changes very, very quickly as well. So we're definitely needing to overcome these challenges with technology, and we're going to need new solutions as part of that.
Yeah, I guess that kind of links to what Brian just said about these technologies kind of being initially developed for governments and security and defense and that type of thing, but then being used generally by everyday people. So it's kind of getting product market fit, getting things made right for the right audience. What do you think about that, Brian?
Yeah, there's a lot of work getting things aligned, and kind of back to Luce's point on storytelling. In many ways, my number one job as a CEO is to make believers and to make people believe in the bigger picture, in what is capable, what is possible, what the world looks like when our capability exists. Sometimes I do okay in that, sometimes I don't, but we're still getting that story better. And just how do we communicate the value proposition and what the world can look like when you have some of these capabilities available to you. And so it's a lot easier to do when you really believe in it and you get excited about it. And a lot of times you'll just kind of see the lights start to click, like, wow, this makes sense. This is something we can actually do. And so, like I said, my job is making believers. That's not just with investors and externals, that's internals too. And I think that's something that you see very good leaders are very capable of doing. And whether you like him or don't like him, Elon is a very good leader in that side, and making believers and making people believe in what is possible. And, I've sat through and was at his internal talks when he was at SpaceX, and you come out of them very inspired and excited about what the future can look like. I think something very important for any leader, whether it's space or not, is you've got to make believers. You've got to get people excited about what you're doing. And you're never going to do that if you're not genuinely excited about it yourself. And so it's been something easy for me to do here at Xona, because I am very excited about what we're doing. But yeah, it's a lot of that all trickles down into, if your sales team is excited about the capabilities that they have, it makes it a lot easier for them to communicate those value propositions over to the customers and get them excited about it too. Everything kind of starts at the top though, and you just got to drive it top down.
Yeah, and I guess also just about balancing short-term goals with long-term sustainability and the ability for this to continue on. I remember I asked you when you last on the podcast something about your vision for a future when Xona. I can't exactly remember what you said, but I remember thinking it was really good. But I don't know if you remember. I asked you what your vision for a future when Xona was on the tip of everyone's tongue and everyone knew who Xona was. And
don't remember what I said last time. Hopefully it hasn't changed too much. A lot of what I get excited about in where we're at today, that we are seeing things start to really tick along for Pulsar, for the capabilities that we're putting up in the air, for a kind of a better satellite navigation system that can solve a lot of current challenges. That's just where we're getting started. And if you look out beyond that, what I get more excited about, and I think the same is true with Starlink and capabilities like that what can you start to do downstream when you have that type of backbone, that type of capability just available globally anywhere else? How do you build on that and expand on that? And for us, I really see Pulsar satellites and the satellite network as being the backbone that we can build off of to solve a lot of problems that I think a lot of other people in the world just aren't even thinking of that are capable, and expanding, way beyond, just what GPS can do today, and kind of shifting away from okay, are we just building, something that's a lot of people see as a better GPS? Are we building something that actually solves all of the location challenges that are out there that are really needed today to drive the age of autonomy forward, for robotics, for autonomous vehicles, for farming, for phones, wearables, etc. And so we're looking down the road at what is possible, but at the same time, we've got to have a laser focus on executing right now and getting our capabilities up in the air. Because if we don't get to the first step, you're never going to get to the third step. So I think there's a lot of things coming, but for now, it's laser focus on the current and get things driving forward and up in the air.
Thanks, Brian. Like a little bit more looking ahead again, just elaborating on what you're saying. So, what do you think excites you most about future of industries in the intelligent age?
Well, I think one of the exciting ones is IoT, actually. Part of that's it's easy for me to punt and say IoT because IoT is kind of a blanket statement that catches almost everything. And part of what it seems like is happening in the world, that if you go back, I don't know, say even 10 or 20 years, people have always wanted to know where assets are. But 10 or 20 years ago, it was only practical to be able to put tracking and communication and the systems on board if it was a, say $100,000 plus asset, most likely. And what's been happening is as technologies are evolving, as communications are getting better, as location capabilities are getting better, the ability to track things and have persistent knowledge of where things are and make good insights and decisions and efficiency off of that has been kind of reducing from $100,000 assets to tens of thousands of dollars of assets to even anything that's worth a couple thousand, maybe a couple $100 is starting to become trackable. If you look at like air tags, for example, and what they're starting to do.
I tag my child or my dog.
Exactly. And those are things that have a lot of value. We're seeing that continue to drive, and I don't expect that to change in the, I guess, location knowledge the same way that what we saw, the first step of GPS was like, holy cow, I can actually figure out where something's at. But what's happening is like, I really want to know where it's at more often and with better accuracy and with better, availability and better insights. I think we're going to start to see the exact same thing happen. And that's kind of one of the things that I think is exciting to us, is the ability to support beyond what is just capable today. And like I said, into the areas that we just kind of accept may not be possible with current technology.
What about how this technology can enable like a greener future and a more efficient industry?
I mean, difficult to follow up what Brian's just said, but frankly, GPS has such a broad applicability but massive impact. And so excited to see how Xona as a backbone can potentially drive that impact. I think we started off the conversation talking about how GPS can enable more efficient and effective use of assets. We also typically look at satellite imagery and resilient communications to enable a greener future. As part of satellite imagery, it's better understanding what's happening in the world at any one point in many different parts of the electromagnetic spectrum that tells you different information. So having that different imagery work together along with data that you fuse from IoT sensors on the ground, it's gonna call for some really interesting applications in future.
Great, thank you, Lewis. Thank you both for your insights today. It's clear, I think, from what we've heard, that the intelligent age brings both exciting opportunities and serious responsibilities for industries and leaders alike. So I hope that's helpful for people to understand a little bit more about GPS and general satellite technology. Thank you, Brian, and thank you, Lewis, for joining me today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
3, 2, 1. We are Seraphim.